shaped by that first experience seeing the film.
This is DR Smart, and I'm reviewing Disney Gallery Star Wars The Mandalorian Episode 1 and 2, Directing and Legacy. Great insight from these episodes. First of all, I love the AMC Jon Favreau Dinner for Five setup it has. Also love that Jon Favreau's prerequisite for this was that all the directors had to love Star Wars. So we start off with Dave Filoni, who went from never doing anything in live action to The Mandalorian. Love his point of view of learning from George Lucas and Jon Favreau. He talks about almost losing the opportunity of the Clone Wars because he thought that it was a prank call.
I'm like, oh, you're making...
yeah, we're doing that.
And I'm like, oh, so you're making Clone Wars. I said, but you kind of already did that, right? And I'm talking like that, because getting to the Clone Wars. And she's like, well, this is going to be a computer animation, and a whole new series. And I'm like, I don't do computer animation. And she's like, well, you've been recommended to us by George. I'm like, really? George recommended me, huh? And this is the way I'm talking.
He also dropped something I never thought of with the fight of Qui-Gon Jinn, Obi-Wan, and Darth Maul in The Phantom Menace.
Anakin. And that's why it's the duel of the fates. It's the fate of this child. And depending on how this fight goes, Anakin his life is gonna be dramatically different. So Qui-Gon loses, of course. So the father figure, because he knew what it meant to take this kid away from his mother when he had an attachment, and he's left with Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan trains Anakin at first out of a promise he makes to Qui-Gon, not because he cares about him. When they get Anakin, when they find him on Tatooine, he says, why do I feel like we've found another useless life form? He's comparing Anakin to Jar Jar.
Excuse me.
And he's saying, this is a waste of our time. Why are we doing this? Why do you see importance in these creatures like Jar Jar Binks and this 10-year-old boy? This is useless. So he's a brother to Anakin eventually, but he's not a father figure.
So Deborah Chow was the next director that they were showing, and it showed that she loves action, sci-fi, fantasy, drama, comic books, and video games. Her big work was Mr. Robot, and she is known to be extremely efficient and like in real scenes over perfect shots. Also loved her insight of Empire and the mixture that was in that.
The way they sort of mixed creatures and the Henson stuff with live action, and I don't think anyone's done it quite like that.
Director Rick Famuyiwa was then shown. For some reason, I remember his episode of The Child the most, probably out of all of the Mandalorian Season 1 stuff. Maybe because of the Mandos and the Jawas. He talks about he likes making stories of characters that don't actually get camera time. So you can see why he directed The Child in the Prison. I love his understanding of the moment when he's directing.
Sandcrawler tread in the middle of the volume was like, I'm actually in Star Wars in this moment, because, I'm standing underneath the Sandcrawler, and then you look at the volume and you go underneath it, and it's like you're really looking up at the Sandcrawler.
I also love Disney's response to the episode for the prison.
They were like, that one's kind of weird.
So the next director up was Bryce Dallas Howard, and I loved her story about how her and her dad were on a business trip
to Japan, and he just took me. And I was 5 or 6 years old, and in Japan he had a dinner with George Lucas and Kurosawa, and I was there, and I fell asleep during. I was really jet lagged, but those are. I remember those.
But it's in there.
That's amazing. I remember those. I had those memories of get my head resting on a.
Another episode I loved was The Sanctuary that she did, and you can see how she made it work with her understanding of how epic Jurassic Park was. I also love her breakdown of how she saw George and the characters that he's created.
Bring collaborators in and see where you might go or take this. he really understood that the characters are meant to expand in ways that George might not even predict.
Next director was Saiki Wakati. Loved the way that they showed him and his breakdown of how he recycled things that he had to create in his first 3 low-budget movies. I love Jon Favreau's take of Taika's directing skills.
Taika knows how to find the humor in the action, but that's a lot different than making fun of the action. We don't make.
Also love his thought process of Empire Strikes Back.
And something that I didn't really appreciate till later in life was in Empire Strikes Back, and that's Luke's training.
Yes.
Like, I think that all of that stuff with Yoda is like, it went way over my head when I was a kid, and it freaked me out when he goes into that cave and sees his face and the mask, and I was like, what is this movie? This isn't like the last one. And but that darkness and all of the messages, and I think my favorite of all of the lines and definitely in that film is when when he's trying to get the ship out of the swamp, and he can't do it, and then Yoda brings the ship out all the way out, floats it over, and then puts it down, and then Luke says, I don't believe it. And he goes, that's why you failed.
Love Jon Favreau's love for Star Wars, and his first experience is of how he had that love. I really like his thought process also of characters and humanity.
And then it turns into something where there's a heart to it. To me, that's part of what makes a Western also, is that there's some deep emotion that runs through it, even though you think it's about the shootouts and the OK Corral and the jumping from the horse to the wagon, but really it's about humanity.
Kathleen Kennedy also brought a great insight about George Lucas and his thought process of the prequels.
I don't think he ever stopped thinking about whether he would do more Star Wars, and I think what happened during Indy was that he was not on the floor directing. He was not necessarily, in it making.
Steven.
Yeah, because it's primarily
producing.
Steven. Right,
Right.
exactly. So I think, with anybody like George and anyone who's a filmmaker, they get antsy after a while.
Yeah, some other breakthroughs that I had no idea.
I'll start by saying
We'll go around. This is like a party game.
No,
We'll
when
go
I
around.
came-
Everybody say one.
When I came into the company, I was astounded to find out that there were over 126 patents. Literally new technology that he had created.
So very insightful 2 episodes, and I'm excited to see what else we learn from the next episodes. Thanks for watching. Take care.
Dagobah system